People often imagine that beginnings belong to the young, but the truth is, beginnings are for anyone who dares to breathe a little differently, even when the years have left their marks. When I first thought of getting on a bike at 80, it wasn't courage I felt, it was doubt. My hands trembled at the idea, my knees whispered protests before I even moved. And yet, beneath the hesitation, there was a quiet curiosity. What if there's still a road waiting for me? Aging has a way of making us believe that the circle is closing in, that our choices are fewer, that our bodies are less willing partners. And in some ways, yes, that's true. Muscles take longer to recover, balance feels more fragile, energy comes in shorter bursts. But here's the other side. Age teaches us how to listen. It teaches us that life isn't about racing anymore. It's about savoring, noticing, allowing each small movement to carry its own weight of meaning. When I first rolled out onto the street, I didn't go far, just a few houses down, then back again. I wasn't trying to prove anything, I just wanted to feel the air again, the way it brushes against your face when the wheels start to move. And that was enough. You see, it's not about the distance you cover, it's about the way your heart reminds you it can still expand, it can still be moved. Perhaps you've told yourself, it's too late for me to start something new. But let me ask you gently, is it really too late, or is it simply unfamiliar? Sometimes the barrier isn't in your body, it's in your belief. What if the things you think are closed to you are just doors that open differently now, slower, with a softer push, but still open? Aging is not the end of movement, it is the beginning of a different kind of movement, one that demands presence rather than performance. It asks you to notice, how do my joints feel today? How does my breath settle when I'm in motion? It is in those small questions that wisdom grows, and wisdom is a gift that youth often rushes past. So maybe the invitation isn't to leap into something grand, but to step, gently, curiously, into something you thought belonged to your younger self. If I could begin again at 80, perhaps you can too, whatever your starting line may be. And I'd love to know, where are you reading these words from? What corner of the world is holding your journey right now? "I thought cycling was for children," she said. But one morning she decided to try. Not a grand ride, not even a full block. She simply sat on her grandson's old bike, feeling its weight beneath her. The first week she pedaled for 5 minutes around her street. By the third month, she was riding 30 minutes a day, slowly, peacefully, always at her own pace. What changed for Helen was not her body alone, but her belief that she was still allowed to begin. That's the quiet shift I want for you. The understanding that starting small is not a weakness, but a kind of wisdom. It tells your body, I will not demand, I will invite. And the body responds more kindly to invitations than to commands. If you're curious where to begin, think of it this way. Don't start with speed, don't start with distance, start with presence. Choose a flat, safe path close to home, a place where you feel at ease. Let your first goal be simply sitting on the bike, breathing in the moment. Then perhaps you walk it beside you, getting familiar with the feel of it. And when you're ready, pedal only a few minutes, no more than you feel comfortable. Celebrate that, because it is enough. Each small ride is not a preparation for the real thing, it is the real thing. Your body doesn't need proof of how strong you are, it needs proof that you are willing to be gentle with it. And as you build this habit slowly, you may notice the subtle joys, the cool air on your skin, the way your shoulders loosen after movement, the small but steady pride of keeping a promise to yourself. This is how you begin, not with ambition, but with kindness. If these gentle reminders are speaking to you, make sure you subscribe so we can keep exploring together. There's something deeply comforting in knowing we're not alone in these late beginnings, that someone else is also finding courage in tiny steps. And I wonder, if you allowed yourself just one small new start this week, what might it be? The further I went with my riding, the more I realized that the true skill was not in pedaling, but in listening. At a younger age, you might have ignored the small signals your body sent, thinking they were just inconveniences.
But as the years accumulate, those signals are not warnings to stop living, they are gentle guides to help you adjust. You may have noticed that your muscles recover more slowly now, or that balance feels less certain than it once did. This isn't failure, it's biology. With age, the fluid that cushions our joints decreases. Muscle fibers repair themselves at a slower pace, and the inner ear, which quietly manages our sense of balance, becomes more sensitive. None of this means you should stay still. It only means movement must be approached as a conversation, not a command. Think of it this way. When you finish a ride, ask yourself, do I feel more refreshed or more drained?
If the answer leans toward exhaustion, perhaps your body is asking for shorter sessions or longer rest between them. When you wake the next morning, does your body feel a pleasant reminder of effort or an ache that lingers too long? These distinctions matter because they tell you how to care for yourself. I encourage you to keep a small notebook, nothing complicated, just a place to write a line or two after each ride. Felt energized after 10 minutes, or knees a little sore today. Over time, you'll see patterns, and those patterns are your body speaking its language of wisdom. There's also a deeper truth here. As the body changes, the goal of movement changes too. In your 30s or 40s, you may have measured success in distance, speed, or calories burned. But now, success is measured in presence, in how much more easily you fall asleep after gentle exertion, in how steady your breath feels, in how your mood lifts even after a short ride. When you stop chasing numbers and start noticing feelings, biking becomes less a task and more a form of listening prayer, a moment of alignment between body and spirit. So let me ask you softly, what would it feel like to treat your rides not as challenges, but as conversations? To let go of the urge to push through and instead discover the relief of stopping at just the right moment. In this season of life, wisdom is not about doing more, but about knowing enough. And your body, if you listen carefully, already knows exactly where that line is. There comes a point when the novelty of trying something new begins to fade, and what matters most is whether it settles into the rhythm of your life. That is where the true gift lies, because routine can be a form of quiet freedom. When biking is no longer a question of if you will do it, but simply when, the weight of decision-making lifts, and the habit begins to nourish you in ways you may not expect. The best way to create this rhythm is to give it gentle structure. Perhaps you choose 2 or 3 days a week that feel natural, maybe mornings when the air is still cool, or afternoons when you enjoy seeing familiar faces outside. Mark these times for yourself, not as rigid appointments, but as promises whispered with kindness. This is my time to move. Choose a route that feels safe and familiar, one where you know every turn and incline. It doesn't need to be long or impressive, it only needs to feel like yours. Over time, that little path can become as comforting as a favorite chair or a well-loved book. Pair the ride with small rituals that frame it beautifully. Maybe you begin with a warm cup of tea, a way of waking your senses before you step outside. Perhaps you finish with a few minutes of stretching, noticing how the muscles thank you for your care. End the ride not with a tally of how far you went, but with a simple acknowledgement. I moved today, and that is enough. In time, this gentle repetition shapes not just your body, but your mind. The consistency creates a quiet pride that doesn't shout, but settles deep inside you. You may notice how much lighter your mood feels on the days you ride, or how sleep comes more easily when your body has been gently engaged. And you may also notice that on the days you miss, you don't scold yourself. Instead, you welcome the next ride as a return to something steady and kind. Routine in later years is not about strictness, but about trust. It tells your body and mind that they can rely on you to provide the nourishment of movement, just as you provide food or rest. It takes away the noise of deciding and leaves only the peace of doing. And as this practice grows, biking becomes more than exercise. It becomes a thread in the fabric of your days, one that adds color and texture to the pattern of your life. What would it feel like if movement became as natural as breathing? Something you no longer had to negotiate with yourself about, but something that simply belongs to you.
Perhaps this is the gentlest form of freedom, knowing you have given yourself a rhythm you can always lean on. At 87, when I place my feet on the pedals, I no longer think about distance or speed. Those measures have lost their meaning. What matters now is the feeling of movement itself, the way the body, however slower, still agrees to join in the rhythm of life. Each turn of the wheel reminds me that time does not erase vitality, it only reshapes it. There is a quiet wisdom in realizing that you do not have to chase the horizon anymore. You only need to notice it, to let it be part of your ride. Cycling has become more than exercise to me. It has become a metaphor for how life unfolds in these later years. The road doesn't stretch endlessly as it once seemed to in youth, but each mile, each breath of wind is more precious. I ride not to prove I can, but to remind myself that I am still here, still curious, still willing to explore. And perhaps that is the essence of aging gracefully. The refusal to shrink into the idea of limitation, the choice to meet each day as an open road rather than a closing door. I think often of how joy has changed form with the years. At 20, joy came from speed and daring. At 40, it came from achievement. But now, joy rests in the simple act of being present, in hearing the birds along the path, in feeling the sun warm my back, in waving to neighbors as I pass. These moments are not small, they are everything. And I wonder what roads are still waiting for you. Not just the physical ones you might ride or walk, but the symbolic paths, conversations you've yet to have, skills you've yet to try, places you've yet to see, even if they're only within yourself. Age does not demand that you stop dreaming. It only asks that you dream differently, with more gentleness, more acceptance, and more gratitude for the steps you are still able to take.
Perhaps that is what keeps the spirit alive. Not the length of the journey, but the willingness to continue moving forward, however slowly, however softly. If these words resonate with you, I invite you to stay connected and subscribe so we can keep sharing these gentle reminders together. And tell me, if you feel comfortable, what is one new thing you would still love to try, no matter your age? I ask not to challenge you, but to remind you that the road ahead, whether long or short, is still yours to travel.